Welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast with your hosts, best-selling children's author Amy Parker and author and co-creator of VeggieTales, Mike Naraki. If instilling biblical values in kids is important to you, this podcast will help give you the resources, wisdom, and hope to do just that. Now let's join our hosts, Amy and Mike, for this week's episode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Bible for Kids podcast. I'm Mike Naraki.
And I'm Amy Parker.
And today we're talking to author and artist Amy Kavelaris. And in just a bit, we're going to dive into all the beautiful things she does. But first,
we like to start every episode of the Bible for Kids podcast with a verse from the Bible. Today's verse is from James 1:17 of the New International Version. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows.
All right. So Amy Kavelaris is an author and artist whose work can be spotted in Target, Anthropologie, Baby Olay, and Better Homes and Gardens, as well as in homes around the globe. Her first book, Bloom with Me, instantly became an Amazon best-selling book in all of children's books. And her latest book, Good Night, My Darling Dear, has just released this year. Her impressionistic bohemian style merges with her painterly whimsy to create dreamy prints and illustrations blooming with life. Amy and her husband, Nick, live in the Midwest with their three small girls, Mila Kate, Maya London, and Mollyana Bloom. So welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, guys.
Okay, so first, listeners, if you're in a place where you can go to Amy's website, which is bloomprintstudio.com, or her Instagram, which is at Amy Kavs, Kavs, go now so that you can see the gorgeousness that we're talking about when we talk to Amy Kavelaris. Amy and I met through our publisher at a recent library conference with a really loud after party. And we just had the most fun talking shop and getting to know each other and your husband, Nick. Hi, Nick. But we didn't really get a chance to talk about how this all got started. Did I mention it was loud? So your latest book, Amy, and the reason you were at this conference was in no way the beginning of your, I guess, career as an artist. So first, just tell us how you got started as an artist and how you end up with your art on prints in places like Target and Anthropologie.
Well, I'll be honest. When my husband went to seminary when we were first married, and I said, okay, after you're done with this, after we get through with this, it's my turn to have a career, to have my career go in a certain direction. I was in sales to get him through school. And so I just, wasn't thrilled with my job. And I had always wanted to have an art school for kids. I just felt like the secular world had just really changed the way the art was really intended to be. And so I wanted to share the art world with kids and adults, but, really celebrate the creation side of it. So we opened a little brick and mortar shop the year my husband graduated from Trinity Seminary in Deerfield, Illinois.
Oh, yeah.
And it was incredible how everything aligned. The woman the wonderful woman who we love, she's still in our life and our neighbor now, actually, she had said, I have been praying over this space in my shop that I want to be used as a little art school. And so it was like this perfect, it was just like meant to happen.
Yeah.
So for about 4 years I taught, and then we decided to move and we were growing our family. So it was like, what do we do? Do we continue on? Do I open up a shop in this new state, or what are we going to do? So we decided to, I just started painting, and I hadn't really painted for payment. It was more, I was teaching art, but I hadn't really done any traditional fine art. And I started sharing it on social media. And then, I guess, long story short, I had been found by some different companies and we started contracting in together. So that's sort of how it worked. Social media, it can be not so good, but it can be wonderful for the connections it makes.
That's great. And do you have an art school background? Are you did you go to school for painting and art, or is that something that y'all just sort of done?
I just have always loved it. I have a film background. Actually, my major was in film. My mother was an art teacher for 30 years, and I just watched her, and she just came alive when I watched her, and I loved.
Oh, that's so
but
cool.
I was mostly a drawer, like as a child. I would sketch in a big tree. We were talking earlier about, the lakes in this area, the beautiful lakes, and I would just be so inspired by the nature around me.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, wow. Well, I feel like I have a lot in common in that sense. So my mom was a painter, and I'm a film professor, and
mm,
I used to think I could draw when I was younger, but then when at the beginning of VeggieTales, we started working with people that were trained drawing and artists, and I kind of I kind of backed up at that point. I said, "All right, never mind." So, oh man, but I love that. So you have three little girls, and at what point did they come along in your career, and how
mm.
have they helped challenge you to keep creating?
Oh my gosh. I think our oldest Mila, she was like the easiest baby. And I hate to say that because, sometimes you have your firstborn and it can be just so challenging. But she would just like sit there and she would color at like 18 months, like while I was working on projects or while I'd be like lesson planning. So she came onto the scene. I was about 6 months into the art school and then we were pregnant with her. And so she was pretty much there the whole time. She would come to the art school with me and she's just been always incredibly adaptable because she was always around adults and kids and she was a little one. And then, it's obviously gotten much more challenging as we've had more babies introduced. I think I used to show these photographs of myself on social media of me like holding my baby and painting. And it was like so peaceful. And people would be like, come on, like this isn't real. Well, now I get what people are saying because now it's like chaos,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we make it happen. We make it work. And they really inspire so much of my work. I think whether or not I'd have girls or boys, I still think I'd have more of a feminine bent to my work just because I really I just love the way that God created nature and I love the female side of it too. But yeah, the little girls, of course, have a huge impact on my creativity and how I work.
That's great. And do they join you in the studio, or do your girls have a artistic bent to themselves? Do
They
they
do. Well,
enjoy it?
they love one especially just loves getting messy.
Uh-huh.
Paint is great avenue for that. And I actually have a table set up in the studio and it's really helpful for me when I'm like really trying to meet a deadline. And I just, especially right now we're like in lockdown and I don't have the normal help that I typically have. So
Yeah.
it's been really helpful to just set up a table. In fact, it is totally makeshift. It's like some totes turned upside down and I've got this long wooden piece of wood from our renovations and I put a tablecloth over it and they just go crazy and it's really good. It's a good space for them to create. So
That's so cool.
And I'm sitting here as you talk, and I've got your website on one screen, and the little slideshow is playing. And there's one photo of you, and I'm not sure which daughter, but you're standing at a canvas painting, and she's standing right beside you painting. It's just really so, I don't know, perfect and adorable. And we were talking earlier. Obviously, some of these are watercolors, but that doesn't seem to be your only medium. I'm seeing maybe some oils or gouache or something.
Yeah, I work primarily actually in gold and acrylic
Okay.
because, now with the turnover, I have to work so
Yeah.
quickly, it dries the quickest. I would
Mhm.
prefer oil, but also because we had a baby 9 months ago, I couldn't really work in the oil with the terpenoid and all the smells and everything.
Right.
So
Yeah.
primarily, yeah, gold and acrylics are really beautiful. They're really full bodied and they dry really quickly, but they offer some really nice colors too. So you don't have to do quite as much mixing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I also work in watercolor. So it really just depends on what the client wants. But oils would be my first media, but they're just not practical for what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And so as we talked with your husband, Nick, I recognize something in you two that my husband and I have in common. And I wonder if it's not worth mentioning for any other creative mamas and daddies listening out there who are pursuing creative careers. Mike probably has an opinion on this too. But at one point you asked me my strategy for business, and I just laughed because there is no strategy really. And sometimes I feel like that's being a bad steward in a way, but I really just tend to go with my gut on things. And it seemed to work, but it also drives my husband nuts. and your husband kind of rolled his eyes and laughed because it seems like maybe you tend to have the same lack of strategy. Am I right? And I guess my question is, how do you balance that? His rational self and your creative, daydreamy self. How does that work in your house?
Well, that's so funny, Amy, because I think we instantly connected on that. Let's just say I'm not typically a business strategist. People don't ask me to be on their business strategy podcast because I really do work from the heart. I mean, of course, I've become a lot more organized.
That's too bad, because our business strategy for kids podcast, we were going to ask for you to be on that next.
Yeah, sorry, you just talked yourself out of it.
No, I mean, I do. I mean, I definitely have a business side. I enjoy. I really do enjoy the business side of everything. But my husband is the one who kind of pulls me like out of the clouds sometimes and is like, well, this is the logic. I need the logic. But I think that's why, Amy, we work with our husbands very well. Because I have really big ideas, and he just helps me say, okay, this is how we're going to make it work. Let's make it work. Like, he's never ever said that's not going to happen, but he's always like, this is why it might not work that way or as quickly as you'd like it to.
Yeah.
So it's, I think that's really, why God pairs people that aren't quite always 100% the same, because we're very attracted to someone who can see life a little different. We have all of the same like life goals, I would say, and we have a lot of all the same values. But when it comes to the way of getting there, it's like polar opposite. I would go one way, and he's the opposite.
Is it Casey Kasem who said, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars? My husband is the keep your feet on the ground person.
I think he was actually quoting like Theodore Roosevelt or something like that. Okay. Yeah. So it came from one of the Roosevelts before Casey Kasem said it. Sorry,
Theodore. I didn't mean to misquote you. But yeah. And anyway, I think that was a paraphrase on top of that. So yeah. But yeah, so I sort of noticed that. Mike, is your wife sort of the grounded one in it's, or are you both very grounded? You seem,
so I mentioned my mom was a painter and my dad an engineer. So they were also very opposite. And I kind of feel like I got half and half in some of those, because, some of my my friends who are really, true artists, it's like, I have such admiration for that, and it's like, I wish I could do that. But then I also kind of have a left brain side that allows me to but I'm not as great as all my business friends, so I feel kind of caught in the middle with all that. And I think Lisa is my wife is probably more on the organized side. I mean, she is really it's like our house is never dirty, because she's like, I set down a cup, and then, it's half full
disappears.
And it disappears. It's like, I thought you were done with that. No, I wasn't done with it. That kind of thing. So, but yeah, so she definitely helps keep me more organized than I would be on my own. So there's definitely some opposite factors there too. So yeah, it's really cool. So, Amy, with your style, it's especially I'm looking at the cover of Good Night, and it's just that feels like watercolor on that. Is that right? Did you use that?
That was actually that. It looks a little bit more watercolor. It's actually acrylic.
Oh wow!
The cover, they were all done on 20 by 20 canvases, so they're quite large. I wanted to get a lot of detail. Wow. I wanted you to be able to really see the strokes in the paint.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so cool. And so what do you think influenced your style? And has that changed or evolved over the years?
That is a really great question. I guess I tend to, when I started out drawing as a child, I always loved faces, and faces I always found they were not helpful for my like perfectionistic tendencies, because I always felt like I had to make it look just like it and so perfect. Yeah. So as I grew into my painting style, I was more drawn to the impressionistic style, because the lines are not so tight and you can really be more free with it. Mm-hmm. It's not quite so abstract, or abstract can be like really, it could be anything goes really. I love the impressionistic, how it's right in between that like realism, but it also draws in a lot of the looser lines where it can just be really whimsical. Yeah. So I guess that's sort of inspired. I love, like the water lilies, or I love like Degas dancers, how they're just so freer.
Right.
They're not like just perfect lines.
Yeah.
Um,
So
heavy
all those
brushstrokes.
all those paintings you mentioned, I think, are at the Art Institute of Chicago. Have you gone through there a few times?
Yes. In fact, if you scroll way back in my Instagram when I was pregnant with my first, I have this. This is hysterical. I have a picture of myself in front of Le Grand Jatte, and it's the one with it's the one done with like the really tiny little dots. It's
The
huge.
Seurat, yeah.
Yeah, Seurat, and
Yeah,
it's got the woman, and they have a monkey on a leash, and she's got this huge bustle behind her. So I have this huge belly in front of me, and she's got this huge bustle behind her. It just looks hysterical. So yes, they do. They definitely have those both at the Chicago Institute.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, so this is probably a good time to take a break, and we'll be right back with Amy Kavelaris on the Bible for Kids podcast.
Don't forget to remember. Ellie Holcomb's newest children's title, Don't Forget to Remember, is the perfect Easter gift for your kids this year. Teach them how to look around and find reminders of God's great love for them everywhere they go. And similar to her first book, Who Sang the First Song, Ellie has a song to go along with Don't Forget to Remember, which you'll enjoy singing as you flip through the beautiful pages of the book. Both the song and the book are available wherever music and books are sold.
Mike Naraki, co-creator of VeggieTales, is back. In his hilarious new chapter book series, 10-year-old Michael and his friend Justin sneak into the Dead Sea caves near the archaeological dig where Michael's dad is working. Michael finds a couple of 2,000-year-old squirrels petrified in sea salt. Hijinks ensue as Michael tries to bring them back to the U.S., hidden in his backpack. What Michael thinks are just cool souvenirs may turn out to be something much more. The Dead Sea Squirrels series is humorous, fun, and filled with character-building lessons. As co-creator of VeggieTales, co-founder of Big Idea Entertainment, and the voice of the beloved Larry the Cucumber, Mike Naraki has been dedicated to helping parents pass on biblical values to their kids through storytelling for over 2 decades. To find your own Dead Sea Squirrels, head over to Tyndale.com, Amazon.com, or your favorite bookstore.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast, and we're speaking with Amy Kavelaris.
So I have mentioned your gorgeous art style once or twice, haven't I? But something that I love is that you also show the reality behind your gorgeous photos and art on Instagram, sort of that Instagram versus reality thing. So tell us about that. We talked about that a little bit when you were in Nashville, but tell us about the old house you live in and then some of the reality behind the artistry.
Mm-hmm. Well, I always find it such a hard balance, that Instagram world, because, nobody wants to see your dirty laundry, but you don't want to appear that everything's just great and perfect all the time. So how do you balance your business with your real life online?
Yeah.
That's a tough balance, but I try to be, pretty honest about what we're going through and our struggles. And I think it's an interesting world today because so much, everybody's very visible if you're online and social media. You do you don't necessarily just have a business anymore. A lot of times you do share a lot about your real life and your personal side of things. So I think it's neat where you can really relate to your clients in a whole other way, because they know you or they feel like, you feel like you know each other, or you can connect a lot more. So we share a lot. We share a lot about our house. We have a 110-year-old house, or maybe even 120 now.
Oh, cool. Wow. That's awesome.
So it's beautiful. Well, okay. It depends on who you ask, Amy. I think you talked to my husband and he was like, "Oh, I hate it," and I'm like,
Depends on how many repairs you have to do, right?
Yeah. I think it's beautiful. It's got all this beautiful woodwork and all this character. And I just feel like every room tells a story. Like there could be a story written in every room, several, just because I just think it's just wonderful. And it really inspires my work, because my work has sort of a vintage flair to it. But I would say, especially like right now that we're in lockdown and everything, working on our house together is like a bonding thing for us. And my husband jokes about it, but like even just like pulling down the wallpaper in the kitchen while we're remodeling, and he's working on the tiling, and it just feels like a step back in time. Like we're just doing this family stuff together. The girls are looking at books on the floor. It's just, there's something really special about that. So we try to share a lot of that stuff on on social media too, because I know everybody loves a good house flip, just
Yeah.
taking something that was old and making it new again. It's kind of fun.
One of
And
my
I'm not-
favorite things to do is lie in bed on Saturday morning and watch other people fix their houses in half an hour. So it's like, I wish I could just kind of do that with my bathroom now. It's like, okay, half an hour. We're done.
Yeah, and it happens in half an hour.
I know, exactly.
Right.
So realistic.
Right.
Yeah, and there was one, I don't remember, I'm not looking at it right now, but there was one photo that you took that just looked so dreamy and just bloomy and feminine. And then you, on the next slide, you showed, what is really going on there. And there's like, some repairs going on in the background and stuff. So anyway, I just love that and appreciate that about, your honesty.
Oh, yeah, I think it's so, it is, like I said, it's a hard balance because my business is very visually driven. So how do you share? I want to share really lovely photos, but I also try to share a little bit of that. So I appreciate that you noticed that.
Yeah.
And so I love the subtitle of Bloom With Me, which is Using Our Gifts to Give. Can you tell us about that book, who it's for, and how you teach us to use our gifts?
Yeah. Well, I guess that was the first book I ever wrote. It was just like, whenever you write, Amy, I'm sure you can relate to this too. Just sometimes a book is just really your heartbeat and you just feel like it's a message you need to get out. So this was specifically, I didn't really know if anybody would read it. I just knew I wanted to write it. I guess going back to the social media thing too, I have a business I run online and my kids are always seeing me online. And I thought this is really important. To share with our kiddos how important it is to use our gifts, but not for self-glorification, but to give back and for the glory of God, because we wouldn't have these abilities, aside from the Lord. And there's just really blessings. So I felt like, here's my little girl when I first wrote that book, watching me, creating these paintings and these visual aesthetics. I wanted her to really embrace that it's just not about ourselves. Life's just not about us. So the little girl's name is Me, which is M-I. I actually studied in Italy and lived there for a while. And so M-I is me in Italian.
Nice.
So it's Bloom With Me. She has an opportunity every day to use her abilities to either give back and to bloom. And then every time she gives back and she like leaves a little bit of bloom behind from her flower crown. Or she can do it for herself. And so it's, and obviously there's nothing wrong with creating for yourself, but just celebrating giving back. It's funny. I remember right before we had gone to print with this book and I was driving and I looked next to me and I saw a car full of teenagers. Not one of them was talking to each other. They were all on their phone. Yeah. One of them was, like doing a selfie face on her phone. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm writing this book because I feel like this is a message we need for our kids going into this very, very selfie culture of, how important it is to really look, use our abilities for others and to give back and to glorify God with them versus how easily we can fall into that trap of looking inward. I think that's kind of our culture's mantras, to look inward for your inner whatever. And it's like, no, I think we need to look upward. That's what I want my kids to embrace anyway.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so I saw a note too on the book that a portion goes to the Blueprint Project. It gives back to other organizations. So what's the Blueprint Project? Is it specific to that book or is that something?
Good question. So every month we partner with a different, not necessarily a ministry, but some kind of an organization that gives back. So we've worked with, all kinds of different organizations where we give 10% every month to a different, of our proceeds. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. 10% of the proceeds every month goes to a different initiative. We thought, if we're going to write a book about giving back, it better be doing what it's saying. So.
I love that.
That's awesome. Your latest book, Good Night, My Darling Dear, we talked a little bit about that, about the cover and the paint style and just all of the, the beautiful art inside of it. I'd love to talk about your process, about how that came about. And you having said you studied film makes so much sense because that generation of image and text at the same time is such a part of film writing, you're imagining what you're going to see as you're writing it. Is that how you work as an author, or do you generate the text first and then go back and illustrate it, or do the images and the words come to mind at the same time?
Well, I think because I'm so visual, it always starts with imagery, and then the words sort of flow from the visual I have in my head.
Okay. Yeah,
Definitely.
that's cool. So so you start your painting first, or do you do a sketch and then write the text, or how did that? So for this particular book,
Sure.
how did that work out
Sure.
step by step?
It would all be it's all in my head first, and then I
Uh-huh.
write, I guess. So that would, to answer your question, I see it visually,
Uh-huh.
then I write because I want to make sure that my editing team is like, this is crazy or this is good.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
it's quicker, I think. I mean, not that writing is quicker, but it's easier for me personally to put my thoughts into words,
Yeah.
and then I can go in the direction once I know that we've nailed down what we want what it to say. What we want
Yeah.
it to say verbally. Then I can go in and connect what's in my head with what the words are saying.
Nice. Okay.
So,
Yeah, that's awesome. And then yeah, because especially since you're an artist as well, and you feel like when you're writing the words, okay, well, I can lean on the visual here. You can kind of foresee that coming. It's like, okay, I know what I want to show here.
mhm.
So it informs what you want to say as well. So I think such a great combination, because both Amy and I am working on our books. Work with other illustrators, and
Mhm.
it's a neat it's just a neat process to see what they come back with, but having that all happen inside of your own head, it's
Yeah, it's really a rare thing to be able to have that, just to be able to illustrate and write text. I mean, everybody, it's a question I often get is, do you do your illustrations too? And I always say, no, I'm not that talented. So it is really a unique talent to be able to do both. And then just to do it so gorgeously is, yeah, that's a unique gift.
Hmm.
it's awesome.
So, what else is coming? Are there other books in the works?
Well, we've been chatting about a lot of different ideas, but nothing specifically. There's a couple that we like marketing, and I have been chatting about a couple different concepts, and then
Yeah.
been talking to sales about a couple other concepts to see if they have to run the numbers and see if they would work for what we're looking
Yeah. And
at
then
right
do you
now.
just always have art stuff going? Like you sell prints, right? Or original pieces?
Yeah. It's a lot. And I actually had to block off a lot of my last year when we were finishing up Goodnight, My Darling Dear, because I was having a hard time, um, like, I guess, being the sole creator of my work. I don't have anybody helping out with just the work aspect of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to do a whole lot of contracted other work. Plus, so yeah, I have commission work that I only take a certain amount of slots per like quarterly, just because I can't with other contracted work with other bigger businesses. I take several of those in a year, and then I also take on commission work, but I'm only able to take on a handful of those, which I love to do. And then I also, on top of that, I work on different series of paintings. So like right now, this is actually amazing how this sort of transpired and how God works. I had started a whole series of little children with little critters that I'm releasing slowly right now, and you can buy them as a set for like a children's room or individually. But it was a hope series, and it's all these little critters and what their significance are biblically, and then you don't actually see the child's face; it's the back of their head, so you're not like assigning a face to the imagery, so that you can like relate with the child in the picture a little better.
Yeah.
And the critter is always something significant biblically, and so it's really neat to see how each of those have really reflected the time we're going through right now. This hope series of one was a monarch butterfly, and how it signifies like resurrection a lot of time, and hope and new life, and like beauty after the darkness of being in that cocoon, or whatever. So,
Yeah.
so then I work on a lot of these different series that I will release at one time, and then they can be available for art prints and canvases, and then we ship worldwide. So there's a lot of different things always happening. So, and then,
And
you know, shipping and
that series sounds like a book right there with the Hope series. So get to work on that.
well, I do, you know, I think that one would be something like that would be really really, I think fun. I think kids relate to animals so much. I mean, I know my children in particular, they just so relate to animals, and I love adding a human element to it. But again, not assigning a face to the child sometimes is helpful because then you can relate a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah,
too,
it makes it
you
a little
know?
more universal.
Yeah, exactly. So that, you know, it's funny. I have thought about how fun that would be to do a series on that in a book. Or there's a painting I just did not too long ago of my girls waiting for their birthday guests to arrive, and one of them
Aw.
lost her shoe. One of them's two in the picture. She's got like one shoe on, one shoe off. I thought, what a fun little story that would be. What's the story behind that missing pink shoe? You know,
Mhm.
Is that, are they in their tutus and she has a sparkly pink shoe on?
that's right. Yep.
Yeah. Aw.
So,
See, and I didn't even know. I just saw it come up, so I didn't know the story behind that. So super cute.
yeah. Thank you.
Well, let's go ahead and take a short break, and we'll be right back on the Bible for Kids.
Where is Wisdom? Where is Wisdom takes us on a creative tour through the beautiful truths found in Job 28. I don't know about you, but the book of Job can be a challenging read. Yet Scott James gets to the heart of the poem that Job 28 is. He so simply yet creatively shares the message that the greatest treasure is found in God and in the wisdom that He alone can provide, a truth that everyone needs to hear.
Epic Devotions, 52 Weeks in the Story That Changed the World, is a collection of insightful devotions which explore biblical events in a way that is relevant and exciting. You'll enjoy B&H Kids Book's special feature, Parent Connection, an easy tool to help you engage in meaningful discussions with your family. Available everywhere books are sold.
Okay, favorite listeners, we are always giving something away. Free books, yay! So to win, check out our instructions on Instagram and Facebook at The Bible for Kids, and just look for the Bible for Kids podcast at Google or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Welcome back to the Bible for Kids podcast, and we are talking with Amy Kavelaris.
So, Amy, you touched on this a little bit, but you know, we were actually calling this the Bible for Kids Stay at Home edition because you know, we're doing this from our own homes, and you know, we usually go into a studio to record it. But could you maybe get into that a little bit more? How you and Nick and the girls are keeping your sanity during this stay at home time?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, we've kind of reinstated the old, you know, Sunday afternoon drive, you know, like my folks used to say, oh, when we were kids, we used to go on a drive because we couldn't watch television. And,
Yeah.
We do a fair amount of that. You know, as heartbreaking as it is, what's happening in so many ways around the world, there's something really beautiful happening in the midst of that, which is so how God works, I think, always. But we've been, you know, I mean, my husband, he's always home. He's always on time for dinner. Just comes right downstairs from his office. But, so that's always, I mean, it's like, and we share the cooking and we involve the kids. And, you know, normally, like right now, I was supposed to be traveling a ton for the book. We had a lot of stops for our book tour, and locally and in different states. And so we've been going on drives. You know, one thing that we've been really intentional with, and not to be like cliche coming from a writer and author, but we've been doing a ton of books. I mean, we've been reading so much. And in fact, I have loved going through the names of God. There's a book, Tommy Nelson, I have it actually right on my bed here, that we've been going through the names of God with our kids, because they're like, well, can you explain to me a little bit more? Like, it's hard for them to understand like the Trinity and, you know, like that concept at this age, like how is God like 3 in 1? Like that doesn't make, you know, so we're explaining.
Is that the I Am book from Diane Stortz?
Yeah. And
shout out to Diane Stortz.
Yes, I love this because it's just, and it's even great. It's a great reminder, like when you're feeling like, oh, this is overwhelming, what's going on. It's like, okay, like my provider, he's going to take care of me. This is not like really, truly, if we truly embrace what the Lord says in his word, we really have nothing to fear. right? I mean,
Yeah.
like my dad always says, either we win or we win, truly. So
I
this
love that.
I find that we've been in a good rhythm. I just think it's been important for us to have the kids have their quiet times, where it's so important for them, especially at a young age, to be able to be still and not be entertained. We're such an entertainment
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like we send them to their rooms and they just have to have their quiet time, and they become so much more creative when
Yeah.
they're in that element. Yeah. And just getting outside and just being in fresh air, and like we're being reminded that we're just like getting out of our heads. I think sometimes we're just so in our heads. That's been really helpful. So we're not perfect, and we have our good days and our bad days, but I feel like for me, especially as a mom, getting up before the kids and having my quiet time, or just even not even necessarily where I'm like in the Word of God, which I do really try to do that daily, but just to be quiet and still before my kids wake up, just to have some time to like just reset is really helpful
Right.
for me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
What are you guys doing? I
Yeah.
don't have a good perfect answer for that.
Oh
But
no, I mean,
No, that's a great answer.
yeah, no, and just like you guys, it's like trying to be present in the moment, and not wishing that, okay, let's get over this right away, and just trying to appreciate all the good things about being at home with your family. I mean, my wife and I just recently became empty nesters, and we're kind of going through our youngest went off to college, and we're going through that mourning process, but then all of a sudden they're back at home. Our daughter and her son, like, oh, this is great. So
yeah.
and we've actually really, really loved having them back, and so now we're going to have to reset and go over it all again, when they go back, but just enjoying the time that they are here and trying to remain present in the moment, and make the most of it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of same here too. And I had a book recently released. I guess ours released about the same time, which is why we were at the library conference together. But, all of that was canceled. And it's like, okay, so now even travel that I had through June was canceled. So,
Right.
so, and kind of like what Mike said, just enjoying the moment and not wishing this away. And so now, as the announcement comes out that we're about to start opening things up, we talked, my son and husband and I talked about how my son actually said, it's going to be kind of sad when everything reopens, because this unique time will sort of go away. And so it's just, I think that's it. It's just enjoying this time right now, this unique time. And I keep telling my son, this is, we are living in history right now. This hasn't happened before in our lifetimes. And so this is really going to be a unique time that you're going to want to remember. But, enforcing school and bedtimes and stuff like that, that has been a little more of the imperfect parts of this. But, but we're really just enjoying the rest and being together.
Right. Yeah, I would say too, with our kids being little, there's an element of bliss for them. Like Mila just thinks this is just the greatest vacation ever. Mom and dad are home; they're not traveling, and for the folks that have kids that are like, like maybe even 7, 8, 9 and up, that are starting to understand it a little bit more, and the anxiety there, that would be difficult, I think.
Yeah.
And trying to sort through that with your kids. We're in a place where it's maybe a little easier for me to say I'm thankful, because my kids they just get to play together, and then we have you homeschool, which we've actually always wanted to try. So it's like, we're probably not going to do it though. Now that we've tried it.
Retreat.
God bless teachers. All I got to say. But, so we it's been a really, like you said, Amy and Michael, just a really sort of tender time where you're like, oh, like this is gonna be kind of a little sad when this is over, because we're not going to have like this very, very intentional time. But maybe we're going to make more of a leap to do so in the future. We're all going to come out of this very different, hopefully.
Yes.
Or-
I had a friend who posted the other day, what's going to be sad is if we don't come out of this changed. So I think we just have a lot of time to think about what this time means. And like you said, the importance of recalibrating each day. This is sort of a recalibrating, this life, and just really looking around us and seeing what really matters, and focusing on that, focusing on being present. So yeah, I think there are a lot of lessons to learn from this.
I agree.
So Amy, how can listeners best connect with you? Your website or Instagram, or how's the best way for them to follow what you're up to?
Well, we're actually in a little bit of a rebranding stage right now. The best would be probably on Instagram. Yep. It's, since Amy Kavelaris is a long name, I go by Amy Kavs, Kavs on Instagram. And yes, my website is Bloom Prince Studio, 2 S's together, bloomprintstudio.com. And we are actually adding on another element to the business, where it will be just my author page as well. So it'll be amykavelaris.com eventually. We're not quite there yet, but we're going to be branding, taking over more of my adult level paintings and content. And then there's going to be another Bloomprint Studio will remain where all the children's work is, and the illustration, illustrative work in the books and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a big job in itself.
Yeah.
So Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We really appreciate having you here. And listeners, we're always giving away free stuff on the Bible for Kids. To see how to win a copy of one of Amy's books, follow us on Facebook or Instagram at The Bible for Kids. You can also learn more about our website at thebibleforkids.com. Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of The Bible for Kids.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Bible for Kids podcast with Amy Parker and Mike Noraki. Be sure to connect with the Bible for Kids on Instagram and Facebook, and at thebibleforkids.com. We'd love to hear your comments and ideas for future podcasts. You can email us, info@thebibleforkids.com. The Bible for Kids podcast is part of the Way Nation Podcast Network. Find more podcasts at waynation.com.